I'm going to tell you something that happened in one of the most famous debates of the 21st century and that almost no one talks about. It was in a packed auditorium. On the one hand, one of the greatest defenders of atheism in the world. On the other, an Irish gentleman with white hair, a calm smile, and a patience that seemed infinite. The atheist was at the height of his argument. He spoke with conviction. He said that science had already explained everything, that God was an unnecessary hypothesis, that humanity had overcome the need for a creator. The auditorium was divided. Half agreed. Half were waiting for the other side to respond. And then John Lennox did something unexpected. He did not quote the Bible. It didn't make an emotional appeal. He didn't raise his voice. He took a piece of chalk, went to the board, and wrote an equation. A mathematical equation. Simple. Clara. And he said in that calm voice that only those who are absolutely sure of what they are saying can have explained to me where that came from. And the silence that followed was deafening, because the equation was not about God directly, it was about the universe, about the structure of reality, about the fact that the entire cosmos works based on laws that can be written in mathematical language. And the question that Lennox put on the table that day is a question that, to this day, no atheist has been able to answer satisfactorily. The question is, why does math work? It seems like a silly question. It seems too obvious, like asking why water is wet. But it's not. It is one of the most profound questions the human mind has ever asked. And when you understand the real weight of that question, it changes everything. Changes the way you look at the universe. It changes the way you understand science, and it changes the way you think about God. And that's what we're going to talk about now. Let's start with the basics, from what everyone thinks they know, but almost no one stopped to really think about. What is mathematics? Mathematics is an abstract language. It is made of numbers, symbols, equations, logical relationships. It exists in the mind. You don't trip over an equation walking down the street. You don't find the number 7 under a rock. Mathematics is a mental construct. It's something that the human mind created, or discovered, depending on how you look at it, to describe patterns and relationships. So far, so good. Nothing extraordinary. But now comes the part that should keep anyone who seriously thinks about reality up at night. This abstract language, created by the human mind, describes the physical universe with absurd precision. Not approximate, no more or less. Absurd. Maxwell's equations predicted the existence of electromagnetic waves before any human detected one. Einstein's general relativity predicted that gravity bends light, and when scientists went to check during a solar eclipse in 1919, the prediction was correct down to the smallest detail. Quantum mechanics predicted the existence of subatomic particles that were only found decades later in accelerators. The Standard Model of Particle Physics predicted the Higgs boson, and in 2012, there it was, exactly where the math said it would be. Now stop and think about it calmly. An abstract language, born inside the human mind, can predict the behavior of the physical universe with precision to several decimal places. Why? Why does the universe obey mathematics? Why does physical reality behave according to abstract logical structures? This question is not mine. It's not from Lennox. It's by Eugene Wigner, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, winner of the Nobel Prize. In 1960, Wigner published an article that became one of his most cited texts in the philosophy of science. The translated title is something like The Irrational Effectiveness of Mathematics in the Natural Sciences. And in this article, Wigner confesses something extraordinary. He can't explain why mathematics works so well to describe the universe. He calls it a wonderful gift that we neither understand nor deserve. A gift. A Nobel-winning physicist calling the effectiveness of mathematics a gift. Because he realized that there is no reason, within materialism, to explain this effectiveness. And Lennox took Wigner's confession and turned it into one of the most powerful questions ever asked in a debate about God. He said, if the universe is the product of chance, if there is no mind behind it, if everything is random matter governed by blind processes, then there is no reason to expect the universe to follow mathematical laws. None. Chance does not produce mathematical order. Chance produces chaos. Chance produces randomness. But what we find when we look at the universe is not chaos. It's an order so profound, so elegant, so mathematically precise, that history's greatest physicists have marveled at it. Einstein said that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is understandable. Think about that phrase. The man who discovered relativity, who understood the structure of space-time better than any living human being. I was saying, I can't explain why I can explain the universe. I can't understand why the universe lets itself be understood. And that's the problem. This is the knot that atheism cannot untie. Because if the universe is an accident, if there is no purpose, if there is no mind behind reality, then the mathematical intelligibility of the cosmos is an absurd coincidence. It's like finding a perfectly written book in the middle of an explosion in a paint factory. Technically possible? Maybe in some abstract sense. But no one would look at that book and say, oh, that was a fluke. Everyone would say, someone wrote that. And Lennox argues that the universe is that book. A book written in mathematical language. And the question is, who wrote it? Now, the atheist can try to respond in several ways. And Lennox knows all of these answers because he has heard each of them dozens of times. Let's look at them one by one. The first answer is, mathematics works because we invented it to describe what we see. It's like asking why a glove fits the hand. That's what it was made for. Seems reasonable, right? But Lennox shows that this answer doesn't work. Because mathematics doesn't just describe what we've already seen, it predicts what we have not yet seen. Maxwell's equations weren't created to describe radio waves. Radio waves hadn't even been discovered yet. The equations predicted that they should exist, and they existed. Relativity wasn't created to describe black holes. No one knew black holes existed. The equations predicted that they should exist, and they exist. Mathematics is not a glove molded onto the hand of reality. It's more like a map that describes territories no one has visited yet. And when someone finally goes there, the map is right. This is radically different from simply describing what is already known. This is discovering truths about the universe through pure reasoning before any observation. And this only makes sense if the mathematical structure of the universe is real. Not a human invention, but a discovery, something that was already there before we arrived. The second answer that atheists offer is, it's natural selection. Evolution shaped our brains to recognize patterns because it helped us survive. And mathematics is just an extension of that ability to recognize patterns. Again, it seems reasonable on the surface. But Lennox points out a fatal problem with this response. Natural selection shaped us to survive in the African savanna, to escape predators, to find food, to reproduce us. Nothing on the savanna required our brains to understand quantum mechanics. Nothing in the survival of our ancestors depended on understanding the curvature of space-time. Nothing in natural selection required that we be able to formulate equations that describe the behavior of subatomic particles and accelerators that would not exist for millions of years. And yet, we are capable of this. The human mind, supposedly shaped only to survive in the savanna, manages to penetrate the deepest secrets of the cosmos, can understand the structure of the atom. It can predict the behavior of galaxies billions of light years away, can formulate theories about the beginning of the universe and the final destiny of matter. Why? If we are just survival machines, why are we able to do science? Why do our brains go so absurdly beyond what survival requires? Lennox says, because we are not just survival machines, we are more than that. We were made to understand. We were designed with the ability to understand the universe because the same mind that created the universe created the human mind. And he created the two things to fit together. The universe is intelligible because it was made by an intelligence. And we are intelligent because we were made by the same intelligence. Mathematics works because there is a correspondence between the mind of God expressed in the universe and the mind of God expressed in us. And this is the equation that atheism cannot solve. Not a numerical equation, an existential equation. On the one hand, a universe governed by elegant mathematical laws. On the other, a human mind capable of discovering these laws. And in the middle, the question. Why do the two sides fit together? Why do the human mind and the structure of the universe speak the same language? Materialism has no answer. You can say, that's the way it is, and shrug your shoulders. But this is not an answer. It's a withdrawal. It's stopping asking precisely when the question becomes more interesting. But I want to go deeper. Because mathematics in the universe is not just functional, she is beautiful. And this opens the door to other evidence that atheism cannot explain. Physicists don't just say that the laws of the universe are mathematically precise. They say they are elegant, beautiful, symmetrical. The MA. The greatest physicists in history used beauty as a guide to discover truths about the universe. Dirac, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, said that it is more important to have beauty in the equations than to have experimental data confirming them. And most impressively, when physicists followed the mathematical beauty, the equations worked. Reality confirmed beauty. Why is the universe beautiful? Why do the laws of physics have elegance? Materialism has no answer for this. Natural selection has nothing to do with mathematical beauty. Evolution doesn't care whether an equation is elegant or ugly. She cares about survival. And yet, the universe is dazzlingly beautiful in its mathematical structure, and the human mind is capable of recognizing this beauty, to marvel at her, to feel something when you look at a perfect equation that is similar to what you feel when you listen to a symphony. And Lennox says, this makes sense if the universe was created by someone who cared about beauty. It makes sense if the mind behind everything is not just intelligent, but an artist, not just logical, but creative. Not just powerful, but beautiful. Now, I want to bring this conversation to personal ground. Because maybe you're listening to all this and thinking it's interesting, but distant, physical thing, philosopher thing, not something that has nothing to do with your life, your problems, your pain. But it does. It has everything to do with it. Because if the mathematics of the universe points to a creative mind, then the next question is, does this mind care about me? Or is it a cold, distant, indifferent intelligence that created the cosmos as an experiment and walked away? And this is where Lennox bridges the gap between mathematics and Christ. Because Christianity answers that question in a way that no other worldview does. Christianity says that the mind behind the universe didn't just create everything with purpose and precision. This mind knows you. He knows your name. You know what you're feeling right now. Know the pain you carry. You know the fears that you don't tell anyone. And he cares so much that he entered his own creation as a human being to reach you. And mathematics, in a strange and beautiful way, points to this. Because a universe calibrated with absurd precision to allow life does not seem like the product of an indifferent intelligence. It looks like the product of someone who wanted life to exist, that I wanted you to exist, who adjusted every constant, every force, every law with the care of someone who is preparing a home for someone they love. Lennox uses an analogy that I think is powerful. He says, imagine that you arrive in a hotel room and find everything prepared for you. The perfect temperature, your favorite flowers on the table, your favorite book on your nightstand, your favorite food waiting. Everything adjusted exactly the way you like it. You wouldn't think, what an incredible coincidence. Chance arranged everything exactly the way I like it. You would think, someone prepared this for me, someone who knows me, someone who cares. And the universe is that room, precisely adjusted, prepared with care, calibrated exactly for life to exist. So that you exist. And mathematics is the author's signature on the wall. It's the mark of whoever made it. It's proof that it wasn't chance. And when Lennox puts this together with the historical evidence for Christ, and we've seen in other conversations that this evidence is heavy, with sources outside the Bible confirming the existence of Jesus, his execution and the resurrection, the picture that emerges is extraordinary. The mind that wrote the equations of the universe is the same one that entered history as a carpenter in Galilee. The God who calibrated the constants of physics is the same one who washed the disciples' feet. The intelligence that made mathematics work is the same one that died on a cross for love. This is too big to fit into any intellectual box, but that's exactly what the evidence points to when you have the courage to follow it to the end. And now I want to talk about something that maybe you are feeling but don't know how to name. Because a lot of people hear these kinds of arguments about the universe, about mathematics, about fine-tuning, and feel something. Not a feeling of intellectual conviction, something deeper, something that feels like recognition. As if a part of you that was sleeping suddenly woke up and said, I already knew that. I always knew. I had just forgotten. And Lennox would say that this feeling is no accident. It's a clue. It is the Creator's signature engraved within you. Because if God made the universe with mathematics, he made you with something even deeper, with the ability to recognize his work, with the ability to look at the sky and feel that there is something beyond, with the ability to listen to music and be transported to a place that words cannot reach, with the ability to love in a way that biology cannot explain, with the ability to look at injustice and know, deep down soul, that the world shouldn't be like this. These are all clues. They are equations, in a way. Equations written not in numbers, but in experiences, in feelings, in intuitions. And they all point in the same direction. And the direction is this. You are not an accident. The universe is not an accident. Mathematics is not a coincidence. Beauty is not an illusion. Love is not chemistry. Morality is not instinct. And the pain you feel when you look at the world and know it's broken is not weakness. It's lucidity. It's the most honest part of you acknowledging that things shouldn't be this way, that there is something better, something true, something that has been lost and needs to be found. And Christianity says that this something has a name, it has a face, it has history, and that he came here to find you. Lennox does not say this as a theory. He says it like someone who has examined the evidence with the rigor of a mathematician and the honesty of a man who is not afraid of the truth. And his conclusion, after 50 years in the most skeptical environments in the world, is that the equation closes. The numbers match. The pieces fit together. The mathematics of the universe points to a mind. History points to Christ. Human consciousness points to something beyond matter. And when you put it all together, the image that emerges is too clear to be chance. And maybe you still have questions. All good. Lennox also has doubts. Everyone who thinks seriously has doubts. Doubt is not the enemy of faith. The enemy of faith is indifference. It's not caring enough to investigate. It's about shrugging your shoulders and changing the subject. But if you're here, if you've listened so far, If something inside you moved while I spoke, then you're not indifferent. You care. And this is already a first step. The second step is to examine. Look at the evidence with open eyes, without fear of where they will take you. No prejudice for or against, only with honesty. And the promise that Lennox makes, the promise that reality makes, is that the deeper you go, the more grounding you will find. Does math prove God? Lennox would say that mathematics does not prove God in the same way that an equation proves a theorem. But mathematics points to God, hard, clearly, with an elegance that, ironically, is the best evidence that someone designed it that way. And when you combine this evidence with all the other evidence, historical, philosophical, existential, the case becomes overwhelming. The equation that atheism cannot solve is not a physics equation. It is the equation of existence. On the one hand, a rational, elegant, calibrated, intelligible universe. On the other, a human mind capable of understanding it, of marveling at it, of finding beauty in it. And in the middle, the question that demands an answer. Why? Atheism looks at this equation and says, coincidence, chance, luck, there's no reason, that's it and that's it. Lennox looks at the same equation and says, this has an answer, and the answer has a name, and that name changed history, and it can change your life. Now it's up to you. If this made sense, leave a like. If it made you think of something you hadn't thought of before, comment below. If someone comes to mind right now, someone who needs to hear this, share. Subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next one.